What the Tech is sponsored by Hover.com. Domain names made simple. Go to gfq.hover.com and get 10% off your entire purchase. And by Stitcher Radio. Listen on the go via the Stitcher mobile app. For more information, go to stitcher.com/GFQ. Welcome everybody to What the Tech. I am a very biased for Microsoft, Andrew Zarian, and the Apple-loving Paul Thurrott is also here with me today. How you doing, Paul?
You know, I have two articles on my site today that are could hardly be described as Microsoft cheerleading articles. One is called Microsoft and the Dumbing of Technology.
I saw that one.
The other one is called How Not to Fix Windows Phone Marketplace.
Yeah, but nobody sees that. But we all know how I know nothing. I know nothing about Apple products because I don't. It's not like I use a MacBook Pro to do the show. And you obviously,
I think it's a lot like you use a MacBook Pro.
Oh, really? Yeah. You know what? It is just like that. It's just like that. For people who don't know what we're talking about, just look at our Twitter, and you'll find out. I'm Andrew Zarian, like I stated, and this is Paul Thurrott in the very Microsoft blue, and this is What the Tech. This is not a tech news show. It's more like two people that rant and rave about things happening in technology.
Right.
And
Let me tell you something about Apple, Andrew.
And sometimes you learn a little bit about. Well, I'm fine with Andy.
Why did I do that?
You could call me Andy.
It felt weird even as it came out of my mouth. I don't think of you as an Andy.
No, you know what's funny? I don't get Andy that much, and sometimes when people do say Andy to me, they even feel weird.
It sounded it felt condescending, which was not my intent.
I don't believe that, Paul. I don't believe that for 1 second. I think you were really trying to be Andy Zarian. Sounds incredibly. I'm not gonna
Little
say
Andy
that.
Zarian today on What the Tech.
Yeah, and you get a little bit about World War II too with this show.
Yeah.
World War II, which is World War IV. We're just skipping over the Third World War and just diving into the fourth one.
Right.
You know, yesterday I had another show on yesterday, and we ended up talking about World War II, and we were talking about it. Actually started out with how it's amazing it is to see people on Twitter not know things that are facts. Like they don't know that the Titanic was really an event. Like it was an actual, it was an actual ship.
It was actually horrific.
It was actually an awful thing, and we started going into this conversation about that, and it led into what are kids not going to understand? Like, are they going to think that 9/11 was like a movie? I'm sure there's going to be like another 9/11 movie somewhere down the line. Are they going to think that was an actual movie and didn't really happen? 100 years from now, like what happens?
Yeah. I feel bad for Leonardo DiCaprio.
He was a real person.
Yeah.
So we were talking about that, and then the conversation of World War II came up. We were talking about the wars, and
World War II not quite as horrific as Titanic.
No, no, of course
not as big of an event.
No, and we just went on this whole thing, but it kind of sprung from the discussion we had off the air last week that people really enjoyed. That we were talking about war, and we were talking about the history of war and how it's changed over the last couple years, and being in the New York City public school system, Vietnam never happened. You never learn about it. We just skip over the 70s and we just dive into the Reagan era, according to the curriculum in the New York City public school system.
One thing I've actually experienced in my life is that history, the way history is told to people, is very much based on where you are and what the time period is and so forth. Obviously, the United States as a whole probably wanted to forget Vietnam for a very long time. But I have an awesome history story. I had moved out to New Mexico to go to college. I was taking an American history class, and growing up on the East Coast, American history is Virginia and then New England. That's the start of it.
That's true.
But when you take an American history class out west, you learn about the Spanish, and they went to Florida, they went to Mexico, they went to South America. All this stuff happened. I mean, there was stuff going on in what is now New Mexico well before there was anyone other than Indians in Massachusetts. And that was interesting. But when we finally got to the part about the Boston area and all the stuff that was going on during the pre-revolution days and the revolutionaries, She actually referred to my hometown, which is Dedham, and she described it accurately as Dedham at one time extended from the border of Rhode Island up to almost Maine, and it was basically everything that was outside of Boston for a brief period of time. And she actually said the word Dedham, but she said it as Dedham. And so I raised my hand and I said, "Excuse me, actually," and this was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I said, "Actually, it's pronounced Dedham, not Dedham."
And what did she say?
She said, "Oh, I suppose you grew up there or something." And I said, "Yes, actually, I did."
Yeah, my town that I grew up in is very easy to say, Bayside.
Yeah,
I don't think they could.
Can't get it wrong.
You
it's
can't
not
get
like Worcester or
no. Actually, there is a Civil War, I guess, barrier here. There's a fort. There's an old fort, and it was made in the Civil War. It was, I guess, during the Civil War because they thought they would come on the shores here somehow.
Right.
So it's a lot of history here, and this was History 101 with Paul Thurrott and the Andrew Zarian. Tune in next week as we discuss
next week Dedham's contribution to World War II,
followed by the War of 1812.
Yes.
We are going to discuss technology here, and somewhere down the line, we're going to talk about it. There's a couple of things I want to go into before we get into some stories. I do want to get into the fact that RIM had a big unveiling that nobody knew about today.
Well, I think some people knew about it.
I don't think most people did, because when I tweeted that, I put on Facebook that an article about it, and people said BlackBerry had an announcement, and these are people that would really follow this stuff.
Yeah. Well, you know what though? That's an excellent example of how perception can kill. Actually, that's the end of the sentence. Perception can kill. It's a problem for Windows Phone. And you can see how it's a problem for those guys because they still actually have significant market share. I mean, obviously, they're on the downward spiral. We might call it a death spiral, or circling the drain, or whatever. But they still have what they have. And we've already all written them off, I think, collectively as an industry. And
let me ask you this, Paul. BlackBerry's market share compared to, let's say, Palm's market share at the time that the Palm Pre was announced or WebOS was announced.
That's hard to say. Well, that's a little different, right? Because remember that Palm had eked out way more life out of their kind of classic Palm OS than maybe they could have or should have.
Yeah.
And by the time they came around with WebOS, that was them starting over, just like Microsoft did with Windows Phone. And it was too little, too late. The company was out of money. They really had nowhere to go. They were only able to launch it on a single wireless carrier. The device itself was underpowered. And it was kind of a perfect storm of problems. So, Palm's market share at that time, much like Microsoft's when they launched Windows Phone, was a little artificial because it reflected a lot of people that were just using these kind of legacy devices that were soon going to be moving on to something bigger and better, and not necessarily what that company was making.
So they had I guess like a conference where they unveiled BlackBerry 10, their latest and greatest operating system. They also handed out a couple they were showing out the developer alpha, but the prototype is not running BlackBerry 10. I don't know if you know that. It's running.
Actually, yeah. Somebody told me that. So it's running that developer environment so they can make apps. Isn't that the point of it? That it's.
Yeah, it's running. It's actually running the Playbook OS 2.0 with a custom keyboard.
Yeah.
But
for the device, sure.
I mean.
Well, it's the runtime. It's the same.
Yeah.
It's based on the same system. So that's fine.
I'm looking at some of these shots. The previous shot. I mean, it looks good.
It does look good. By the way, how awesome would this have been like 3 years ago?
Oh my God, this thing would have been great. But
it would have killed, right?
It looks like a cross to me, and from the image that I could see, it looks like a cross of Android and Windows Phone.
Yeah.
Right.
It has cleaner than Android.
By the way, here are shots on winsupersite.com. I have some images here.
It's a little Windows Phony. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell from a static shot. I mean, what the navigation is and so forth, but it looks clean. It's high res. My understanding is the device is a dual core. It seems like a pretty good device. I think it's 1280 by 720 or 768. I can't recall. So it's a high res screen, 4.2 inches. It seems nice. I mean, the problem is it almost doesn't matter. WebOS was beautiful. I if WebOS had taken off, it would have been a good thing. WebOS deserved to take off.
Yeah, the problem was hardware at the time. The hardware was not that great.
And it's easily solved, and they did solve it, but it's like it doesn't matter because the world has given up on you, and I'm a little nervous for them. I mean, I still feel like I wrote in that article that they're probably still doomed. And
but
I
I'll
think a lot
tell
of
you
it is
this:
perception.
I think there's still a stronghold of BlackBerry users that are sticking to BlackBerry. They haven't abandoned BlackBerry for whatever reason.
Maybe.
I mean, if this operating system, if this device is all that they're saying it will be, it might have a chance. And I want it to survive. I want there to be competition amongst 4 major, platforms. There should be Windows Phone. There should be Android, iPhone, and BlackBerry 10. I mean, the more competition, the better it is for all of us. This is how innovation starts.
Eventually, too much choice leads to that same problem that you have in so many circumstances, whether you're talking about like the Apple App Store, where there are too many apps, or, a supermarket that has 117 different versions of salad dressing. It's hard to find stuff. It gets harder. The decisions get harder when there are too many choices. The problem with too many mobile platforms, and we don't really know what the right amount is yet, but it's going to be 2 or 3, I think, is that it makes it really hard for developers to support all those platforms. They're all completely different,
Yeah.
BlackBerry 10 supports a native programming model that's based in C and C++, but it also supports a web-based programming model based on HTML5 technologies. Sounds a little bit like Windows 8, but of course the APIs are completely different. They actually, as it turns out, the native language stuff is completely different or somewhat different. It's I don't think it's.
But I mean,
unless
there's
it was
still
super easy to port between them.
I mean, there's still. I mean, a good 6 months away from having any kind of launch date.
I know. And then, of course, when you're talking about first-gen anything, you have to take that with a grain of salt. Because just like that first-gen pre you're referring to.
You know what their defense is to that, right? When people are telling them, well, it might be buggy, it might be first-gen, they go, no, we've had plenty of experience considering we've had the playbook on the market. So they are kind of the one that shipped without an email app. Yeah, so they're looking at it as, well, it should technically be considered
like
a second or third gen because they've had 2 versions of the BlackBerry OS and now this is coming out. But I mean, how do you explain that to the consumer?
Yeah, right. It's like, remember that tablet you never heard of? Well, we just made a new one and it's a phone. So, we buy into this.
Yeah. And we changed everything. I mean, it's not the same thing. We changed everything, but
we changed everything, but it's enough like the other one that it's okay.
Yeah, this is going to get a little.
It's kind of an interesting argument.
I'd love to get hands-on with this thing and play around with it. And I've always praised WebOS, but everybody knew that WebOS was doomed because of the hardware.
I will always feel bad about WebOS. I wasn't as invested in WebOS as I was, say, like the Amiga, which is another one of my
Yeah, but you know what, though? It has a spot with me because I was such a Palm user for many years that when it came out, even though I didn't buy it, I still felt a connection to WebOS. I'm like, wow, this is great. It's a great operating system. And but I knew it was going to fail. I mean, they had no money. They really didn't have the vision that iPhone did. And I think what damaged WebOS and Palm and BlackBerry actually might have an advantage here is that they are not looking at this as a Apple killer. At that point, every phone that was coming out in the market was an iPhone killer.
Sure.
And when you take, let's say, Michael Jordan of phones and you put, I don't know, Bill Cartwright next to him, it's not really going to happen.
Bill Cartwright served a completely different role, but I see what you're saying.
Sure.
Speaking of which, what do you think about the Amari Stoudemire thing?
He's an ass.
I watched that game last night.
Yeah, I did too. But you know what? I'm a big Chicago Bulls fan, so
That's even worse.
I know. I'm a big Bull. I'm a
At
huge
least with
Chicago fan.
the Knicks, there's some chance that guy's coming back, but Derrick Rose is done.
I know. Well, you know what? Here's the problem with the Knicks. The Knicks are much like WebOS.
Wow. You can see the potential.
You can see the potential, but it's underdeveloped.
Yeah.
By the way, they got their butts handed to them 2 games in a row, and it just awful defense.
It was a 10-point game all last night. I mean, it wasn't a thorough,
Well, in the second half,
like the first night.
In the second half, they fouled a lot, so that actually drove up the points for Miami. And considering Miami is extremely talented and the Knicks are not, that also goes a long way. I get so aggravated with the Knicks. I get so aggravated with the Mets.
I completely disrailed this conversation.
I know. Now, like, I'm going to go on this rant about the New York Knicks, and I'm going to get a bunch of emails telling me I'm a sellout for liking the Chicago Bulls. So, I don't know.
Oh, come on.
I don't know. I'll somehow bring this back.
The New York Knicks were never going to win the championship, but the Bulls could have won the championship, and now that's not happening. So that's actually a big deal.
No, it is. I mean, you never know. I mean, they could potentially do something, but who knows at this point?
The Bulls?
Yeah.
No.
You don't think so? Well, we'll find out. They're playing tonight, according to the NBA.com.
Oh, no, they'll make it past the first round. I mean, what are they playing? Philadelphia right now?
I'll tell you right now. Let me look. Yeah, they're playing Philly tonight at 8.
All right. So Philadelphia was almost certainly the last seed in the East. So I don't think they're going to have a problem beating Philadelphia. That's not it. It's like the Celtics. The Celtics may or may not get past Atlanta, but then let's face it, we're done after that. I mean, that's the extent of the season.
Yeah.
So I
Sad.
think this is just the natural way of things
Yeah.
for the Knicks and the Celtics, not for the Bulls.
Yeah, this is just the natural evolution of basketball. The Celtics will dominate the East, and then the Lakers are Oklahoma's also good. It might be Boston, Oklahoma.
No, it won't be. It's going to be Miami, and it could actually, well, it's hard to say. Yeah, Thunder, maybe.
And Paul Thurrott with sports. Thank you, Paul.
I also watched the Red Sox game last night. I was switching back and forth if you want to talk about baseball.
I don't know. I've given up. I've really, because our teams are so bad. Like I used to invest so much time into the Mets.
I don't understand this. As far as I'm concerned, like for example, like what the Mets are doing right now. This happens every year. You should enjoy this for what it is.
I literally live.
It's like a New York tradition.
It is. I
get really excited about it for 1 week.
I tell people I am destined to be a loser.
Different.
My whole life I've been destined to be a loser. I live 2 miles away from Citi Field. I'm literally right around I could drive to Citi Field and be there in 5 minutes with no traffic. I mean, I'm that close. And I've given up. It's like having. No, I'm not going to go there. I was going to say something, and maybe some people may be offended, so I'm not going to go there. I really try to pull back.
Cancer, right?
No. I was going to say it's like having like a relative that may be an alcoholic that lives right next door, and like you never go to see
them. So it's nice
them.
having them nearby, but you're almost better off.
Yeah, you're better off almost not seeing them.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
It's not a healthy relationship.
Not a healthy relationship. But I mean, back to BlackBerry, I don't know what they're going to do at this point. I hope this device does well. One issue when I was reading all the articles is that they're still concentrating and hoping that because they have this stronghold on enterprise, this is going to become an enterprise device. But I don't think they understand that enterprise has kind of evolved to the iPhone and everything else because
it's gone.
Nobody's really buying a BlackBerry.
Direction. Yeah, I think that was the big shock to the center of RIM's strategy, where they always said, well, look, we're always going to have this market, so we don't have to worry about that. And now the iPhone especially is making huge roads into these once highly managed businesses that are just using Exchange ActiveSync, if even that, basically just to do the basic policy protections, and that's it.
Yeah, since we're talking about phones, I don't know if I showed you this, Paul, but I got one of these.
What is that?
The Galaxy Note.
Oh, right, of course. It was so humongous. It's like a clown phone.
Look at this. Look how ridiculous. It's actually a really good phone. The display is stunning on this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a beautiful display.
I look at that and I think to myself, that wouldn't be bad as a highly portable media player. Sure. Assuming the software was there and it worked pretty well. Like, that's not a bad size. Something you could throw in your bag, you wouldn't even know it was there.
And
nice.
I've been doing I've had this for about 3 weeks now. This is the third week I have it, and I have not sent it back to AT&T because I do want to do an extensive test because I'm really curious on what the battery life is. I have not charged this phone since Friday.
Really?
But I'm not really using it. I'm just letting it stay.
By the way, if you did that with an iPad 3,
it would not.
It would be dead now. It would be dead now. No, it would.
Really?
Yes, and this is actually one of the things that's shocking to me about it because the iPad 2 and the iPad, the original one, were particularly amazing with regards to that. But I am shocked by how I'm actually wondering now if something's wrong with mine. So one of the things I tested this week was whether I just turned off cellular altogether.
But are you using it? I mean, are you just letting it sit there?
I use it I read on it every day.
See, no. I'm not using the device. I haven't used this device. I'm just letting it sit.
Well, but I don't actually think that it's me using it. I mean, obviously me using it is killing the battery, but I think that it's more than that. With the iPad, it seemed like before you could just sit it over there in the corner and it wouldn't drain battery. But I actually wonder. It's something about. I think it's, I don't know, checking email or whatever. For some reason, this is using the battery way more than it used to in the past. Because it just I see numbers on this thing I never used to see. The other iPads, it was always like 70% full.
Yeah,
this
actually,
one,
that's
this
funny.
one, the 10% warning comes on. I've never even seen that before.
I haven't charged my iPad 2 in about 4 days.
Yeah, I don't know
and 71%.
Here. I have it. I will tell you exactly what it says. It's just weird. I just 21%.
Yeah, see,
It was never like this.
No,
Never.
I agree with you. The 4G is really killing it. It's a combination of the 4G and the display, the Retina display. I think that really sucks up the battery, but it takes a lot longer to charge also because it's a much bigger battery on the iPad 3. When I had the iPad 3 here, because AT&T also gave me that, they only gave me a week with it, but it would take forever to charge the battery. I would imagine, I would pop it in. I say, okay, maybe like in an hour it'll be charged. No, it would take, literally 3 hours to charge this from like 50%.
Yeah.
It was crazy how long it would take. So I was very surprised at that.
But this thing you're saying, that thing's just sitting there and it's not.
It's been sitting here since since Friday. And I'll tell you right now what percentage because I can't really tell. You know, it doesn't tell you, but I would imagine I have like 30% battery life left on this.
Okay.
But if I did that to, let's say, my Nexus Galaxy.
Oh, it would die that day, 4.5 hours.
I don't have to use this phone. I have not made one phone call with this. It was fully charged this morning. I have 30% left on it.
The Nexus, whatever it's called, Galaxy Nexus or whatever, it's almost like a technology experiment. It's like, let's see how fast we can burn through a battery.
Oh, I know. It's so bad. It's so bad. But let me see what else I had here because. So you think this is it for BlackBerry? Are they going to put this out? They're going to fail at it?
Here's the way I would put it is this: I don't feel any animosity toward RIM, although they very clearly have made a lot of bad decisions for a very long time. I feel that time is of the essence, and that every day that goes by they're further and further towards just being screwed.
Yeah.
I really don't feel that they have a chance.
I hope.
I wouldn't mind that. I look at that and I think this looks good to me. I don't know. I really can't. I haven't evaluated the quality of the system or the APIs or anything. Obviously, they just announced it, but it looks nice. I don't wish them ill, but I just don't see anything.
Now, Android on the other hand, you do wish ill too.
I wish Android would die a violent and horrible death. Yep. Android. Steve Jobs was a little melodramatic, but he basically described it as stolen property, and that's exactly how I see it. I don't think there's an original idea in that or in almost anything Google does, and I hate Android. I just hate it.
This phone is a lot better than what I had before, and the operating system is a lot better, but it's taken them 4 versions to get here, and it's still not
obviously,
better.
Your usage is going to depend, or is going to impact how you see it. If what you want to do is run a handful of popular apps, check your email and stuff, it's fine. It does all that stuff, of course.
Try making a phone call.
Okay, phone call. I can't say. One of the things I'm really blown away by with the Lumia, the Windows phone that just came out, is the amazing volume, both of the speaker by itself, which is crazy, and also of the call quality. And it's loud and clear, and it really works. So this is a thing that has been a notable issue for almost all of the phones I've used over the past many years. The iPhone is particularly bad with regards to call quality. The Windows phones I've had were okay, but then you access this, use this one, and you realize, oh my God, this thing is incredible. It's really nice. It's funny to me how that's not a big deal for a lot of people. I think that a lot of people just don't use their phones as phones, and so that may or may not matter to you.
Yeah, maybe. But
that device you're looking at right there, the way I would want to use that is I'd want to put some movies on it and watch them on a plane. But every time I've tried to do that with Android, you run into problems, you know?
I'll tell you, typing on this thing is really good because I have really fat thumbs. So when I'm typing on my phone, I constantly hit the wrong buttons. I could type.
2 hands or 1 hand?
Let's see.
Do you do it both ways?
I do it both ways.
Ambidextrous.
Yeah, I do both hands, both fingers. Yeah, I really don't do one hand. Well, this is impossible. You can't do one hand on this. You really have to use 2 fingers.
Just because of the sheer width of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see.
So I don't know. I have huge hands. Like, that might be an awesome phone for me. I mean, other than the whole Android thing.
No, I do both on this one too, and it's awful. You can't. You keep hitting it. I don't know. They're all the same. But I do want to go into this because I was trying to get to it earlier, but we tend to get distracted a lot on the show.
I haven't noticed that.
No, I went to an AT&T event last week, and I think I spoke about it for a little bit, and this is definitely not my calendar. Free McDonald's vouchers, limited time. Why would I have this on my calendar for the month of May?
Not my calendar.
Yeah, that is weird. Huh. I don't know who half these people are in my book. That is bizarre. As I was saying, we tend to get distracted here on the show, and I did speak to somebody from AT&T. I was talking to the VP of marketing for AT&T at the AT&T event. Okay. And I asked him, we were talking about 4G, and I got to see that 4G infrastructure, and it's actually amazing that it's like 4 racks, and that's it for the entire tri-state area.
It's like a little box in someone's basement.
I mean, that's literally what it was like. They're like, here's Edge, and it was
Bobby,
racks.
we need you to reset the 4G.
Yeah, Bobby, it's not working. And the guy goes, he just hits the button. He's like, okay, now everything's back up. It was literally like
stops watching TV.
Yeah. It's 4 tiny racks. I mean, like maybe this high, and it's like, here's our 4G. And Edge is like wall to wall, just servers. So we were talking about 4G, and he was talking about, how they're expanding and typical spiel. Very nice guy, though. And I asked him about 4G at the house. And I said, here's my question to you. And he was a guy from Queens, so like he kind of took a liking to me, so I could ask him a little bit of a hard-hitting question. Okay. And he cursed, too, when he was talking. He's like, I'm a guy from Queens. He's like, born and raised in Belrose, Queens. I'm like, no shit. He's like, yeah, shit. So I knew he felt very comfortable with me. So I was like, I'm going to ask you this, and I don't know if you've issued a statement about this, but I would love to see 4G in the house. He goes, well, you could do that. I'm like, no, you can't because it's limited. You still have a cap. Yeah. When are we going to see uncapped 4G come into the house? And then I went into this whole thing about how 4G would have been the answer for many rural areas because they really can't get wired. And their only option right now is satellite or dial-up or some DSL services that might get to you. But 4G would have been the answer. And why haven't we seen AT&T or even Verizon come up with 4G at the house? I'm willing to pay $100 a month for unlimited 4G access in my house. And I caught him off guard with the question. Like he I guess like he was going through I
don't understand. They've been doing everything they can to limit data plans for cell phone users. Why would they offer unlimited for houses? Is there some dollar amount?
No. Well, that was my question. First of all, my question was, why are you limiting? And that's what I said to him first. And B, why wouldn't you want 4G in the house?
Like, I think it's because of the cost. I'm looking at a laptop because I just wrote about this feature in Windows 8. So Windows 8 has this thing where you can meter connections, and it will tell you how much data you use. It's designed for 4G and 3G connections, obviously. But as it turns out, you can do it to a Wi-Fi connection. So I don't actually use this laptop that much. But I can see that since 47 days ago, apparently, I've used 3.62 gigabytes of data on this Wi-Fi connection, which is not actually a lot. I mean, I was expecting it to be a lot more. So I can't do it on my desktop computer because it's got a wired connection. But I would imagine that the data usage that's gone through this machine is horrific. Yeah. And there's no way they could ever support that. I just think it'd be too expensive. I don't know. See, here was his answer. First, he gave me a whole, we're expanding and we're this. And he finally turned around and said, right now, our network is so new, we would not be able to handle the amount of traffic that would come in. And to me, that was also his reasoning behind 4G on our phone, why it's being capped. Why we're having bandwidth limitations with
LTE and 4G.
You know,
And I told him, like, well, here's the strange thing. I mean, 4G is a lot faster than 3G, but still, our cap is what, 5 gigs or 10 gigs in some situations. So let's say 5 gigs is the average. You're gonna get to a 5 gigs.
by the way, I bet the
quicker.
average is less than 5 gigs. But
Not usage. I'm not talking about usage. Our cap.
I know.
Oh, you think the cap is less?
Well, okay.
I
mean,
guess.
but the usage is less. I mean,
Yeah, much less.
Most people
Much
have
less.
probably 2 or 3 gig plans. I have a 5 gig plan that's with tethering. I mean,
I have 5 gigs with mine, and I'm never getting to it because I never use 4G because I'm terrified to hit it. But
which is
it's such a weird way of thinking. But
Right.
he
It
was
is.
kind of telling me, we add these caps in because we're terrified to see what would happen if everybody actually did blow through the 5 gig cap. I don't think they're capable of it at this point. I mean,
yeah.
I know it's a huge marketing thing, but I really don't think the network is capable of handling that much traffic. So they terrify us into remembering that there's a cap. I mean, that's the only reason.
Speaking of unhealthy relationships, right?
Yeah.
The relationship we have with our.
But do you think 4G at home will
wireless
become a
carrier.
realistic thing? I mean, will it become something like, if I'm in the middle of nowhere in Montana and I
Yeah.
can't get cable or DSL, but I can't get 4G.
Are you going to have it? I mean, would you even have such a thing in Montana?
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, technically, they should be able to because they could hook up a lot more of these towers, and it'll be a lot cheaper for them. The infrastructure will be a lot cheaper for them to put these towers up than to wire every house.
Right.
I mean, that's the goal, right? I mean, they want to wire up the entire, hook up the entire country with 4G and LTE. So let's say if not AT&T Verizon, which has a larger footprint on the U.S. when it comes to LTE, would they even be interested in that? And why wouldn't they be interested in getting them?
It's
I'm
interesting. I
baffled
mean, I
by
guess it would depend on how they handled it. Assuming that the infrastructure was there, if you could pay a certain amount per month up to a certain limit and then do what they do on wireless, which is maybe pay an additional, what is it, like $10 for each gig beyond your limits? Is that how it works?
Do you know what the data cap is for at home? Because I know they do have like 4G devices for the house. I know through Verizon.
Yeah, but aren't those just really repeaters? I thought
Yeah.
that was for phone calls. Is that not? Am I missing?
No, they also have okay, I'll give you an
4G data.
example.
They have 4G data antennas.
Yeah. Like I guess you pop like USB devices for 4G.
I mean, look, maybe we're looking at this the wrong way. In the same way that iPad type devices and smartphones are taking over as the general purpose computing platform. I mean, maybe the wireless networks that serve those things do make sense for the people who are only consuming data over those type of devices. In other words, if you can get by with using an iPad, maybe a 4G connection is enough, right? I mean, a lot of the reason I suck down huge amounts of data because I'll download ISO files and huge, VHDs or whatever. But normal people aren't doing stuff like that. So maybe I'm looking at this wrong as well. I mean, I think of it in terms of all.
See, you don't find it a necessary thing, right? I mean, you don't see this as becoming a necessary thing to have.
It depends. I mean, I use my cable connection to play Xbox Live. That would be terrible over 4G, I would imagine. I would think.
Yeah, somebody's saying
expensive at least.
People are saying it's
I don't know what
gigs.
kind of data that thing consumes. I have no idea.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind having something where I know that my device is hooked up in the house. So if or let's say I'm not a big gamer and I didn't want to have everything. I just have a cell phone and I get 4G and I could have all my devices connecting to this 4G hotspot.
I just don't see that ever being less expensive than more traditional access types over Wi-Fi. That I think obviously in special cases where that's the only thing available, that's fine. But I look at it more like there are all these different network types and you fall back and you use the one that's either the fastest and or the most efficient from sort of a financial standpoint. That hitting 4G is not what you want to do when a free Wi-Fi connection is available.
Yeah, but see, I'm thinking people would use this rather than at-home broadband, or if they don't get it,
maybe
if they're not capable of getting it.
It depends on usage, right? I mean, think about the way Fios works. All of our on-demand stuff goes out over the data connection.
The data connection, yeah.
So that's obviously it doesn't have to, but I mean, if you have TV, you have to get it some way, and if you're getting it from a cable company or from Fios, they're going to offer internet, and there's a deal when you get them both together, obviously, it becomes less expensive. So I guess, Verizon as a provider of 4G could offer that as an alternative, but that kind of shatters the whole notion of Fios.
See, to me, your answer, like you gave, like, well, why would you kind of want to? We're trying to keep it separate. I was expecting something similar to that, but when he turned around and said, well, our network can't really handle it, I was actually surprised at that. Because the entire...
I'm not surprised by that. It's new, right?
Well, the entire event...
Is, does it ever really get built up? I mean, will there be a 5G eventually that replaces this?
I actually asked them. I asked them that. They took us when they took us to the server room, and I said, well, what kind of lifespan are you looking for 4G? And they turned around and said, well, 3G's lifespan was about 10 years. And I'm thinking, I'm like, I was doing the math. I'm like,
that means this one would have to be half. It can't,
no, because the capabilities of 4G, according to them, are a lot more. According to one of the guys, engineers, he said they're going to be capable of outputting 50 to 70 megabits a second with 4G. Currently, I think their network average is like 7 to 12 is what they tell you.
Gotcha.
So I guess
except that what's going to happen is there are going to be more people using it, and maybe your effective rate is never really going to go up, but maybe or I would hope it does, but it's hard to say how this is going to go.
Did you see that stat I put in the notes? Internet speeds around the world have dropped.
Yeah.
I mean, they're saying the average has dropped 14%.
2.3 megabits.
To just 2.3 megabits a second during the last quarter of 2011. Now, I saw the stat. And actually, the U.S. numbers have dropped too. But I saw the stat, and I'm trying to justify, like, how could this happen? And I'm thinking, well, maybe they're wiring up more countries that really would not have any kind of infrastructure to begin with, and they're starting off at a lower speed. So, yeah, it's going to bring the global average down. When more places get wired and more places are not getting things like Fios, it's going to drop. But I found it very interesting that it's gone backwards. It's dropped in the States, 5% last quarter and 14% for the entire world. It's silly, right? I mean, isn't this crazy that we're not just getting crazy high speeds everywhere?
This is just like what happens with processing power in computers. When you have what seems like infinite capacity, you stop being efficient in the way that you go about using those resources. I think that the clog that's occurring with bandwidth will hopefully result in a reevaluation of how we use that bandwidth, and that the apps and websites and web services and all that stuff will do so more efficiently, and that maybe that could help reverse that trend. I mean, 2.3 megabits is
not that good.
It's ancient.
Well, what is 2.3 megabits? When let's go back to when I was probably getting 2.3 megabits, and that's probably with DSL, right? And let's go back maybe 7 years.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's old fashioned.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember ISDN was so cool because you had like two 64K channels or something. Maybe at one point it was two 128K channels. I don't remember, but
with ISDN,
ISDN, yeah.
I think there were 12.
Ludicrous, by today's standards.
Well, what it was, ISDN. I mean, do you remember when you could combine two 56K modems?
Yeah, I never actually did that, but you could do some kind. Yeah.
And then they started selling actual modems that were like double. They were double decked. And you could put into, but you needed two separate phone lines, and it would combine it somehow.
Sure.
I mean, and you were getting like 12K. I mean, and that was great speeds. But it's interesting that this stat came out, and another argument, someone in the chat room was saying maybe people are realizing that they don't need the highest speed anymore, and they're cutting back. But I don't think the rest of the world thinks that way. See, here's the thing. I know we have all these crazy packages, but
first of all, we don't have the fastest internet in the world.
Oh no, South Korea by far,
by a long shot. So
South Korea, Japan, but again, those are much smaller countries. But those are smaller countries. They're not having to wire 350 million people.
Okay, but they're smaller countries, but they're also far more densely populated. It's actually, in some ways, much more impressive when you consider the density of the population. You remember when when cable was first being rolled out in the United States, they would skip over apartment complexes because they didn't really know how to handle that. It was much easier to do residential type stuff with homes.
Well, they're still doing that. I mean, Fios is refusing to go into the city, into Manhattan, because they're terrified to wild those apartments. So yeah, it still happens.
Okay, well, but you get the point.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the density of the population in Asia and Europe is far greater than anywhere here, and that they're able to also provide faster internet on top of that is perhaps even more impressive.
Do you feel that I wonder what the national average? What is the national average for the states? Because I would love to know what we are averaging right now.
I don't know. Is your survey from that Internet Pew thing? Because these seem like the guys that would be doing this. No, it's not. So I don't know. I'd have to look that up. I don't know.
It's an interesting thought to see why it's dropping and
how they're using it. I'd like to know. You mentioned a specific Pacific statistic, sort of that. I wonder if these IP connections are replacing telephones across the board.
I don't think most people are getting at home wireless anymore. I'll tell you, even with my generation, and even here, I know many people that they just have their cell phone as their phone.
I would not be able to do that here without one of those antennas.
Because we
just live in a dead zone. But
sure.
It's funny. We actually still have 2 landlines, and part of the reason is we've tried to get rid of them, but we have Fios, and they have cut our prices a couple of times for us not to get rid of them. It's cheaper for us to keep them, which sounds impossible.
Well, it's all about the bundle, right? I mean, we've spoken about this before. They kind of supplement loss from one device or one service by putting the price into the other one. Like, you can't leave. I can never eliminate like Showtime or Cinemax because my rate would jump up.
Yep.
And
which is right. Not just the $20 or whatever that those services should cost.
Yeah. So let's say the service costs $20, but they would charge me an extra $30 for canceling it. Yep. So they kind of get you to get everything.
You're saving money by spending more.
Yeah.
It's trickle-down economics.
I do want to continue, but we should talk about our great sponsor, Audible.com. Paul's a big audiobook fan, so am I, actually. And Jessica, too, my wife, has really gotten into audiobooks, and she has the main account now, and she's just constantly getting audiobooks and listening to them on her way to work. Paul and I do an Audible pick of the week each week here on the show. Paul, what is your pick this week?
This is, I can't open it for some reason. How do you there we go.
There we go.
So
I just opened it too.
You're probably familiar with the Game of Thrones from the TV show. And
yes.
And I had avoided this stuff for a while because I was kind of a purist on the Tolkien, Asimov, stuff. I wasn't prepared to believe that anyone could write a believable fantasy book that made any sense and, was a real world and everything. But actually, this is an accomplishment. And it's interesting because I'm actually reading the second book right now, and it's a lot more convoluted than the first. I don't know how this goes. I think it kind of goes off the rails a little bit as the series continues. But the first book is so fantastic and is so well written, and also the TV show is great too. It's worth seeing. And this is one of those good examples where there's a movie, or in this case, a TV series on HBO that does a very faithful adaptation of the story. And you actually get more out of doing both, so that you could watch the show, and if you like it, you could say, "I'd like to know more about this stuff." And you read the book, and there's so much more. It's a very rich, layered, believable world, and it doesn't. It's fantasy, but it's not. There's not a lot of in the way of dragons and magic and stuff like that. Although that actually all happens later in the series as well. But the first book in particular, having read the first 2. Is an amazing accomplishment, and something I'm embarrassed to say I kind of came too late. But I'm glad
I have yet to see the TV show.
Yeah, it's violence and there's lots of nudity.
I know everybody loves it. I mean,
but it's gritty and realistic, and God, they create such a believable world. It's really impressive.
So Game of Thrones is your pick, and actually, this is a big book. If you and it's a really good deal because you're getting bang for your buck here. If you sign up to Audible by going to audiblepodcast.com/GFQ, you get it for absolutely free. It's a $31 book, and it's 33 hours, actually 34 hours long. So it's a very long book, and you're gonna have many hours of listening time. Here is a clip from the audiobook.
My wet nurse said the same thing, Will, Royce replied. Never believe anything you hear at a woman's tit. There are things to be learned even from the dead. His voice echoed too loud in the twilight forest. We have a long ride before us, Garrett pointed out. 8 days, maybe 9, and night is falling.
Who's doing a narration? Do you know?
It's Roy Daughters.
Yes.
So it's
yes.
one of the narrations where he kind of does the voices a little bit, but it's got it's funny because it does have that kind of British vibe to it. And if you watch the series, they film, well, at least the first season, is filmed mostly in Northern Ireland. And if you're aware of the great actors from that area and from other series like The Tudors, I mean, every great UK-based actor and Irish-based actor is in this series. It's really neat.
Yeah. My pick actually is something that's actually on the other side of entertainment, and it's about comedy. It's about stand-up comedy, and if I could eliminate this Audible would like to help you logo, there we go. It's called Born Standing Up, a comic select by Steve Martin. I work with a lot of stand-up comics, so I'm always involved in what's going on, and this was recommended to me by one of our hosts here at the GFK Network, and he's a big Steve Martin fan. He's a big fan of comedy, and this is his autobiography, and it's narrated by him too, so it's very, very cool to hear him talk about his life. Here's an example of the book.
Simon & Schuster Audio presents Born Standing Up.
I love the
Comic's
music.
Life by Steve Martin. Read by the author.
And that was it. That's the book.
Beforehand. I did stand-up comedy for 18 years. 10 of those years were spent learning, 4 years were spent refining, and 4 were spent in wild success.
And that's all you need to know about Steve Martin. You could get it, actually, once again, you could use your Audible credit and get it for free by going to audiblepodcast.com/GFQ. I love the ones where the author is reading it.
Yeah.
It's different to me because you kind of understand like where they were coming from, and they'll put more emphasis on certain words. So you kind of get this pure experience on what he was trying to write and what he was trying to tell you when you're reading it. Actually, I just got a message from my wife is listening to the show, and she just downloaded the Game of Thrones book.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
Yeah,
it really
so
is.
she said, "Hey, we have it.
You
Don't
have to
buy
be kind
it."
of a diehard to take it past book 1, but the first one's great.
Yeah. Audiblepodcast.com/GFQ. Get a free audiobook by going there and support the show, guys. Paul needs socks. That's what he told me. Socks, yeah. We could buy a couple pairs of socks with the...
I do have bare feet right now.
I do want to go into one topic, and then before we wrap it up, and this kind of leads into the history portion of the show. And we were talking about how...
Oh, is there a history portion?
There is a history portion. Well, we were talking about, World War II and stuff in the beginning.
Yeah.
And this is what I was going to lead into, and this is what I did. I totally forgot what I was trying to say at the beginning of the show.
Okay.
And I went along with that whole thing, like, hey, we did this whole history thing on the show. And then I was like, oh, my God, what am I talking about? I have no idea where I'm going with this. So now I just remember because I went back. And, certain parts of history are left out of curriculums and school books. But,
Right.
And I got a message. It's amazing today. Today's just one of those days. But it's interesting to see how life and history is being documented on the internet. There are many facts about World War II and World War I and even Vietnam that we don't know, and we're just finding out. There's always something that's been unveiled about the war, something that's unveiled about a certain event in history. But everything is being documented, and our personal lives are being documented. So even with our family lineage, when people are going to be putting, family trees together, everything is going to be on the internet and much easier to find. But how is this going to impact history and the way we look back on the past, or even our families, 4 or 5 generations from now looks back?
I think this is incredible because there are strict histories, right, where just talking World War II, you talk about the military engagements, the strategies of the various sides, how the battles went, who won, and where the lines moved and so forth. And that's one way of recording history. But I think the far more interesting approach, although that's very necessary, obviously, is how regular people experience things. When you talk about like Pompeii, covered by ash from the volcano, it happened very suddenly. Lives were disrupted. It's fascinating because it gives you a peek at what regular life was like for those people. It's something that never would have survived. If Pompeii had survived and nothing had happened to them, that stuff would have all been lost.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. You know, some of the stuff they pull up from the Titanic and the papers and the
we're still learning.
documentation. It's incredible.
Almost every year there's a new, search for Titanic. And I was reading about how there's a missing hydrogen bomb somewhere off the shore of Georgia.
Yeah. Actually, there's one off the shore of Portugal too. If I'm not mistaken.
and I was watching this documentary, and they just found, they're putting together more data, and they just found more information about it. But let's say it happened with the technology of now, we would have never had that, and everything would have been documented in a different way.
Technology is going to help with the recording of actual history. That's just happening, right? So now we have amazing footage of what happens during wars or any events. If some world leader is assassinated or some incredible event happens, it's going to be documented.
But we're also getting the raw emotion of the moment. Also, we brought up 9/11.
That's one thing. But I mean, you can look at the stuff that people are doing on Facebook, the inane, I'm having this for lunch, that kind of stuff. That I feel like is a blip in time. I feel like for right now we've got our heads stuck in these stupid little devices. We walk around bumping into walls, we're not paying attention to the people around us. I feel like that's kind of temporary. But the ability to document regular life, which is not necessarily interesting to anyone today, whether you're doing it through a blog or, video recording or whatever, is going to be amazingly helpful to the future, because it just shows you so much about life at that time. Even something as simple as watching a movie in the 1970s, like if you watch something like The French Connection or The Friends of Eddie Coyle or whatever. You can see where they filmed it and what life looked like then, and the cars and how different things were. And even that little glimpse gives you even though it's in a movie or a TV show or whatever, it gives you an amazing glimpse at what things were like. And I think that this stuff is going to, make that even more possible. I
think human behavior also. I mean, this is great. Can you imagine 100 years from now, someone looks back and let's say a relative of yours, and somehow Facebook, everything is archived and you could even find it. It would be amazing to see, like, oh, Paul, wrote this blog, Uncle Paul wrote this blog, and this is how we felt about this product. And they're able to even take that and compare it to their times or compare it to what happened during that era. It's a very interesting thing. And people, like you said, people look at it as, it's amazing how people go and say, I had a tuna sandwich for breakfast, but that's what people do in their personal journals and diaries. Instead of it being a personal journal or diary, everything is public now. I mean, you literally every second of your life is documented, and I'm responsible for that. I put on Instagram and on Facebook.
You're personally responsible.
I'm personally responsible for all of that. Actually, I invented the internet. It wasn't Al Gore. Like
I didn't invent the internet, but I did ruin it.
I did ruin the internet with my awful Instagram photos. But I'll give you one example. Skype just and this is going to be documented. Skype just charged me $26
for
no idea. I put on Instagram, every Saturday I go to the bar and I have my lunch and I take pictures of what I had and I write, I'm getting drunk right now. That's all public. Everybody sees that. And these were things that people did at home in a book.
Right.
And, one day you would find your great-grandmother's journal and you would read it and you're like, wow, grandma, partied a lot. It's going to be very interesting to see how this happens in 100 years. But that's saying, will the internet be here in 100 years? And will these things that we document be available in 100 years? That's also a very interesting concept. All these things that are happening on the internet, and every website is documenting every possible thing happening, and we all get to read it. But in 100 years, is the standard still going to be the same where we're able to access this information? Look at the internet from 1989 to now. Are there websites from 89 on the internet? No.
Yeah, right. That's true. But there's still archives of that information. I mean, obviously there's a big effort on the part of some people to make sure that information carries forward, that obviously data loss because of data format loss. And, it's just like losing a language. If nobody speaks this language of some tribe in South America and they have documents that talk about their history and no one can read it anymore, it's effectively just gone, right? Same thing with data, data stored on whatever they are, cassette or old hard drives or whatever. If we don't have the hardware that can read that stuff, it might as well just be gone. So you need to carry it forward and make sure it's always available. I think that's less and less of an issue going forward. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find someone that could read one of those old phonograph tapes, or whatever. But stuff that's been stored electronically. I mean, I have data in my own short life that is just a blip in the continuum that originated on an Amiga formatted floppy and is now stored on the internet in a cloud storage somewhere. So it kind of made its way along.
Yeah. It's very fascinating.
It's worthless, probably. But
someone might find it interesting one day, who knows?
Sure.
I just found it a very interesting topic and how it's going to impact the way we see things. I mean, one example, I was reading this article about I think it was during the 10th anniversary of 9/11. They were saying is, what if there was text messaging during 9/11?
Right.
What kind of information would we have gotten? And I'm thinking, there was no text messaging. I'm like, yeah, you're right. People were not text messaging at that point.
Sure.
And it's just,
but they might have been text messaging during that disaster that happened in India or during the explosion in Madrid or whatever. I mean, the tsunami in Japan. There was a tsunami separately from that one in Indonesia. Where some people that I know were actually involved in it, and more modern communication was available. So there was some interesting, communication that did occur there. So yeah, definitely.
So I thought that would be an interesting topic. At the end of each show, Paul and I do the 10-year game.
Wow.
We started this.
We have a lot of traditions.
We do have a lot of traditions. Last week we did it, and I got a couple suggestions, and I narrowed it down to 2 for this week.
Okay.
The 2 are Android and television. What we do, we predict where this product will be in 10 years.
Yep.
Overwhelmingly, people wanted you to have Android and me have television. I don't know they wanted this, but apparently this is what they wanted. So, again, I suggest if you guys want us to pick a topic, you can send your email to guysfromqueens@gmail.com with a specific topic. Last week we did the iPhone. This week we're going to do Android and TVs, where these products will be in 10 years. You can send them, or you could tweet us. I'm Andrew Zarian on Twitter. Paul is @TheRot on Twitter. So tweet us, let us know what you want us to pick. Paul, you will go first this week.
Wow.
And where will Android be in 10 years?
So, I mean, to be fair to Android,
burning in a fire is not the answer.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to go there. I need to remind myself that what a sad joke Windows was for so long, and how so many people hated it like I hate Android and thought it was a ripoff of something else, and kind of take that into account, and that Windows became something very valuable over time, and certainly much more usable and reliable and secure and so forth. So nothing like it was in the beginning. So with that in mind, I mean, I think one of the possible futures of Android is that it becomes, effectively the Windows of mobile devices, that this thing may be, in fact, an unstoppable force that through its sheer mailability becomes the backbone of just an amazing array of device types, and not just portable devices, but also the TVs and all that stuff that we were talking about a few weeks ago, where Android is what's behind all this stuff,
Okay.
Even to the point where application compatibility doesn't mean anything anymore, that maybe the app platform in a Google TV type of thing will be a little different than the one for a tablet that's a little different for the one for the phones, that this thing will be in cars. It will be in, when you get in a taxi in the back and there's a little video thing going on there, that thing will be an Android device, that this will be the engine that drives anything that is electronic going forward. Remember the Sun ad? What was the Sun ad? They used to say, we put the dot in .com or something like that.
I can't remember it.
Something like that. That Android will be to electronics as that, say Sun was saying they were to the internet, that they are the central bit of plumbing that makes this stuff possible. Everything from really dumb devices to whatever. I think that a lot of the stuff that I don't like about Android would be very easy to fix, right? That if somebody, Google or someone else, came up with a front end to this thing, it was beautiful to look at and a joy to use, that would solve a lot of the issues
Now,
that I have with Android.
Do you think it's because they're concentrating so much on the backbone of Android and they're not concentrating on the cosmetics of the operating system?
No. Google is moving so quick to get it to jam this thing down to everyone's throat that they're not paying attention. They're not literally paying attention to the legal aspects of what they're doing. They're screwing over everyone in their mad bid to establish this thing as effectively a standard.
It's a number.
They're very
pretty much
successful at doing it.
It's a numbers game. It's absolutely a numbers game at this point with Android, where every month there's a new stat of Android overtaking the thing that you thought it overtook, 10 months ago.
It's strange because ultimately you could make this argument where an Android-powered smartphone, a future Android-powered computer that will replace that stupid Chrome OS that they should never have done, or an Android TV set or an Android tablet are all 4 different things. And that it's not fair to add those things up to arrive at some kind of Android market share. But the thing is, the sum of those things is a big deal because eventually I think we're going to wake up one day and it's going to be like all Android everywhere.
See, I don't think in 10 years it's going to be called Android.
Yeah, okay.
I think they're going to abandon that. I think we'll see something like it'll be a Samsung. We won't even know that
literally. What if they open it up as an international standard?
Yeah,
what
that's
if they
what
literally
I'm thinking.
said, this is something that anyone else, that you could branch. I mean, it's almost there now, right? I mean, anyone can do anything with it pretty much.
I think it will just start seeing these powered by Google TVs, and it'll have, a custom interface, and the backbone will all be Android. I think that'll, but everything will have.
I think the thing holding it back right now is just that Google obviously is using this as a platform to which their online services and ad platform can hit. It's like it's another way for them to make money implicitly.
Well, this actually goes into something interesting. Next week, I had picked one of the other suggestions was Google. Where will Google be in 10 years? And I was thinking we could have that'll be a long discussion because technology changes so rapidly. Who thought 20 years ago that IBM would be in this position they're in now?
Well, by the way, so we're on the cusp of what could be a bewildering series of antitrust cases against Google.
They're definitely going to. I mean, that's definitely going to hit them.
Impact everything that this company's doing.
People look back at Microsoft and the things that they were being accused for are far less than what Google's doing.
It was so serious back then.
Yeah, and look at what Google's been doing over the last couple of years.
I don't think anyone takes Microsoft very seriously today. Hopefully, to their detriment in some ways, but. Google is running roughshod over their markets. Apple's really kind of doing the same thing as well. I think in Google's case in particular, there is some really damning evidence that these guys have just broken the law left, right, and sideways and have stolen intellectual property wholeheartedly, have done it, with the full understanding of what they were doing. They just don't care. They seem very brazen to me.
Well, it's not even just. Let's not just consider Android. And we all use Google and we all use Gmail, but let's look at the bigger picture.
Settlement? What if one day they have to divest themselves? Remember, Microsoft was going to be split into different companies.
It was like 3 companies, right?
Right. So what if that's the solution for Google, right? What if Google is so powerful that you literally want to cut the search engine off from their advertising and from the other stuff? It's like, search and advertising is like 99% of Google, and then they have this other 1% that does the 2,000 other projects they make.
There was a great article. I have to forward this to you. I have it saved somewhere. They were saying how Google's ad revenue from their Google search ads, there will be the time that people realize it is not effective at all. And people stop advertising.
Their only source of income suddenly
exactly. And that is really their main and let's say, I don't know the exact percent, but that's their main source of income is those ads. And they are utterly useless.
They've been bad for people for a long time. There was a happy short period in the early 2000s. I don't remember the exact time frame, 2003 to 2005, somewhere in there, where people, like individuals, could start a blog and they could get Google ads on there and they could actually make money, and it was like a career.
Yeah.
And remember one day they kind of changed the rules and it just fell off the face of the earth for all these guys.
Yeah, well, I have such a story for you where I've...
Oh, you may know the exact date.
I may know something very similar to that because Google owed us Google ad money for YouTube videos.
Yep.
This is years ago, my personal videos. This has nothing to do with it. And they one day decided that they're not going to pay me anymore.
Sure.
Let's fast forward a couple years. We were a YouTube partner, totally different company, and they turned around. They sent me an email saying, "Hey, listen, we're taking your partnership away because you have violated our AdSense terms of service agreement."
Okay.
And I appealed it. I said, "Well, what do we do?" And they said, "Well, you've been clicking on your own ads." And I wrote back and I said,
your own ads.
yeah, because that's, again, you can't,
No, I understand.
which makes total sense. I get it.
Yep.
And I said, well, that's funny. Which ads are you talking about? Because I never implemented Google ads on any of my YouTube videos.
Right.
End of conversation. They never got back to me again, and they just canned my account. So either they have a really bad system, or they may or may not be something very strange happening over there where they just happen to select a handful of people and cancel their accounts in hopes that they're going to save a couple bucks. Now, I don't know. I'm not accusing them of anything. I just found it interesting that my video, they removed the account and there was no ad there. So what ad are you talking about? But yeah, I think people are going to realize that Google ads are not really worth it, and what's going to happen then? So, that's such a big, that'll take like 2 days for us to discuss Google's future. I mean, it really will.
Yeah. I mean, right. I think they're heading for some rocky shores.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We should do that next week. Google's going to be the pick next week, and we could have a big discussion on that. My pick is television. And, Paul, you could, of course, you can comment on this too. Where would television be in 10 years? Now, with the trend currently, let's say whatever technology we're seeing happening now will be implemented in 5 years. I don't think we're going to be at the 2K or 4K type television broadcast. I think we're still going to be at 1080p in 10 years.
Really?
But the focus will be more on interactive television rather than sitting there and watching TV. I think we're going to have more, which is probably going to be annoying, but let's say a TV show is on or like a game show is on, you're going to be able to play at home, which you're seeing it now, but I think that's going to become prominent. Web TV is going to be incorporated with television. The days of the cable box are going to be gone. We're going to have a little tiny adapter that does everything for us. But as far as picture quality goes, I do not see a major improvement over picture quality in 10 years.
Oh, I don't know about that one.
I think we'll get like Blu-ray quality television, but we won't see this crazy 2K and 4K video.
What about 3D? Do you think 3D is a flash in the pan?
Yeah. The people will be looking and saying, I can't believe people spend money on this.
Yeah,
I think that's my personal agenda. If I was in charge of televisions in the entire planet, I mean, I'm in charge, and there would be no TV, no 3D at all,
no 3D
ever. I don't know. It's fascinating. Television is a very interesting thing because if you look at how it's changed over the last 10 years, right? If we go to 2002, it was the beginning of the HD boom, and I wouldn't say that we have had this. Wow, look how different TV is.
No, I mean there are efficiencies that can occur. Like for example, we
thinner, lighter, yeah.
Well, in the early days, we'd have like a cable box, then we would actually attach a VCR to it, and then DVRs got built into cable boxes. And I think eventually that stuff will just be up in the cloud. It won't be local. You don't have to worry about it. It will always work, and you'll have that kind of that vision we've always had of being able to watch anything you want at any time. I think that's more valuable than resolution almost.
Things
needs to occur.
And this kind of actually, there was a story that Hulu is going to start requiring to show proof of TV subscriptions. So if you have a cable service, which I mean, this is just so backwards in so many ways.
Okay, so if you think about like how HBO Go works, they do that. You have to sort of verify you have the thing, that you're paying for it. I mean, I guess there are ways to do it, but that's the start of a pretty bad experience, right there.
Well, now, what are you going to do with Hulu Plus? Are you going to still have to pay extra?
What about? Yeah, I think that I almost called it a network. I think that companies like Hulu and Netflix are going to be offering more and more original programming, and that the lines between the networks are going to blur in the same way that, remember when cable came around? We used to have like 3 major networks in the United States and PBS pretty much, and that was it. And then the local UHF stations, I guess they were called. Is that right?
Yeah,
the
UHF.
Higher channel ones, channel 38 and 56, local stations. So, now we have these hundreds and hundreds of channels. I mean, there's no reason that Netflix and Hulu and others can't essentially become stations, or at least places where we go to get content, and that we don't have the... it's like public access, the equivalent of blogs and podcasts and so forth, where there are going to be people that do a really good professional job of this stuff and can make movies and TV shows and some of them are going to take off.
Yeah,
you know?
we're good. I agree with you 100%. I think another aspect would be that we're going to be able to pick whatever we want, whenever we want, wherever we want with television.
Yep.
So you're going to be able to turn it on, and I think we'll have more integration with the computer and tablets. And you're going to say, okay, you know what? Forget about the DVR. That's going to be a thing of the past. Everything is going to be there for you. And you're going to say, okay, you know, I want to watch Storage Wars 8.
Yep.
Click on that, and you'll be able to watch it at whatever pace you want, rather than having to go to on demand.
You'll be alerted when the new episode is available.
I mean, isn't it silly that we have
but
both?
you won't have to sit there on Thursday night and watch it at 8:00.
Yeah, but isn't it ridiculous that we have both on-demand programming and DVR programming?
Well, it is. It's funny. I in our house, for whatever reason, Sunday night is turned into the go-to night. So we have all these bizarre, well, not bizarre, but we have all these shows that are recording all at the same time, and now we've actually overloaded the DVR. And so, because you only have 2 channels you can record on. But it occurred to me this Sunday night that you cancel a couple of recordings, you do stuff. We want to watch like Mad Men and Game of Thrones, and now there's this new show Veep on HBO, which is excellent, and then The Killing is on for Sunday night, and there's all this stuff. And you realize, like, you have to kind of do this mental math. Like, I can't watch all these shows on Sunday night, so if I'm going to watch it tomorrow, then don't record it, right? The only reason you record something right now is because you're going to watch it tonight. It's kind of nice 45 minutes in to watch it without commercials or whatever. But if you're going to watch it like a day later, it's going to be on, if it's an HBO show especially, right? It's on demand. You just don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. I think everything will be on demand at that point, and everything will be...
Yeah.
Someone messaged me and they said, what do you think will happen to independent broadcasts like what we're doing now in 10 years?
I actually think we benefit.
You think we will benefit from this?
Remember that conversation we had about sports? I was saying that, there are guys somewhere who do a better job of calling the Knicks game than the guys that you watch on TV. Mm-hmm. Maybe, and if that was open to them, that you could watch the game but listen to them, I bet a lot of people would choose that if that was an option. And someone's going to figure this out and make that type of thing available. I think that a lot of money in TV is wasted, just like it is in any of these entertainment industries, on the personalities and just the production that's required and all that kind of stuff, and that people who are smaller and can move more quickly and who are really knowledgeable, but you've never heard of them. Today, we're kind of like, not that I'm throwing myself in there like I'm part of it, but, today those people are bloggers or podcasters. They make videos maybe. I've got a friend who knows more about football than anyone who's on TV. You should see the spreadsheet he creates for the draft every spring. It's insane. And he would be an amazing personality to have on a show about that topic.
No, listen, I mean, if you look at what we're doing, thousands of people download the show each week. Mm-hmm. A couple thousand watch live. And
this is a fairly niche-y thing.
It's
right?
a very niche show.
We're
and
talking about technology. I mean, it's not going to be a major technology channel on TV that does really well and ranks up there with ABC. This is a very specific thing.
No, and they're really not learning anything. I mean, we're not teaching them technology.
No, they're not learning
they're actually losing brain cells by watching
They're actually losing
this.
brain cells.
But they're getting our opinion on it, and they're watching because, we rant and rave about stuff, and sometimes they agree and sometimes they don't. But it's more of that type of show.
But that's the future is, I think, more stuff that is more readily available. Like I said, it's not the 3 big it's not the 3 big stations and networks. There's 1,000 choices. I don't do this. I mean, and I just don't. I don't know how other people do things. But sometimes if it's a Friday night, my wife is out with her friends or something, so it's me and the TV. I might go to Netflix and actually I'll go to HBO first. Is there anything on tonight? No, almost no, never, no. So, and then you go to Netflix and you look at it. Maybe I want to see a horror movie tonight, or I want to see, whatever. That type of thing is so close to ideal. The only thing holding it back is just the selection. It's not that the movies aren't out there in the world. It's just that they're not on the one service I'm trying to use. In the future, some people may want to sit down on that same night and do the sort of video equivalent of a sports call-in show. Mm-hmm. And there is no reason, and I mean no reason at all, why that conversation couldn't be occurring over what we now think of as a podcast and be better than anything that's on ESPN.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think the fact that these independent broadcasts, someone pointed out, it's been going on for many, many years.
Yeah.
And now...
some of them are going to get found out.
Some of them, of course, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Revision 3, for example,
And it's going to
is
be like
rumored,
the next Fox. Remember when Fox kind of came along 25 years ago, or whatever,
and it was like it looked weird.
It
The
was
set
kind of low
cheap.
quality compared to ABC and NBC and CBS, but they did some crazy stuff. I mean, Netflix may come calling one day and say, "Hey, you guys do this show. This is really great. We'd like to have a sports show on Netflix."
Well, here's one example: Revision 3, which is a pioneer for web television, and they're one of the most successful ones. They're rumored to be possibly acquired by the Discovery Channel.
Yeah,
this is a rumor that just came out today, and this is, I mean, it's crazy to see that, and it's amazing to see that happen.
Absolutely,
and
but, I think that, there are lots of people who are doing it's a good thing. I mean, Amazon has the capability to do exactly what we're talking about, and just start talking, going around and saying you and you and you, and it's more money than we could ever make doing this show, or that other people would make doing a podcast. Way less money than Amazon would have to pay for professionals that work for major networks or whatever. And then you come in at a new level, but you're making more money yourself and doing a better and you're doing a better job than the people on the major networks. And those things, some of them are going to take off. They just are.
Yeah, I think a couple of weeks ago we were discussing the IIB, the International Association of Internet Broadcasters, something that I've co-founded with my co-founder Spencer Coburn, and we have about 150 members now, which I'm blown away by the fact that we've had so many people sign up and we're still in beta. And there's so many great broadcasts out there, and these are people that I would have never discovered. And I'm sitting there and I'm listening. I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. It's entertaining, and these are guys they're not doing it for money. They're not doing it for any kind of fame. They're doing it because they like to do it, and they're extremely entertaining. I think shows like this.
When you do anything for too long, I think you forget it. You forget why you got there in the first place. I'm sure a lot of those guys on national TV are in the same position.
Yeah,
it's nice. It's nice to hear people who know what they're talking about and are enthusiastic about the topic and live it and breathe it every day, and that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it'll evolve into something like that. More people like Paul will be on your network television. No. We know we're talking about you, including you. Paul Thurrott is going to be on a network television somewhere, just screaming about products. That's what we want. I want the Paul Thurrott.
Such zero audience for that. But.
You're telling me people will not watch the Paul Thurrott Variety Hour on NBC?
My wife watches the Paul Thurrott Variety every hour every day, and I can tell you, it gets really old. Tell you.
Someone at Chatham said they actually gain brain cells when they watch Windows Weekly, but this show cancels everything out, so they break even at the end.
Right. It's like the Johnny Depp character in Once Upon a Time in Mexico. My job is to make sure everything is an even keel. So.
Absolutely. So you do a good job with that, actually.
I'll kill the cook.
But it is time to wrap it up, Paul. Go to Paul's website, winsupersite.com. Great stuff happening. Tomorrow you're speaking, right? You have a speaking engagement tomorrow.
Yeah. I'm going to an event called Tech Update 2012 down in, I think it's Greenwich, Rhode Island, or North Greenwich. All-day event. I'm on very early, 9:15 in the morning, so I'm going to talk about Windows 8 in business.
Really nice. Actually, that's the biggest issue that they face right now,
I was actually a little
right?
nervous about this one. I'm thinking, how am I going to fill an hour? Actually, I'm going to run out of time, so I have a lot of stuff to talk about.
That's great. You could also go to winsupersite.com. Paul is on a great show called Windows Weekly on the Twit Network every Thursday at 2 p.m. East. Great show. One of my favorite podcasts out there, actually. One of the first podcasts I downloaded was Windows Weekly.
Me too.
Yeah. See how things work out? You can follow Paul on Twitter at Thurrott. You could also follow me at Andrew Zarian. I'm most of the time just taking pictures of my drinks and posting it on Instagram. So it's very entertaining to people who are alcoholics like me. I may or may not. Let's not jump the gun here. You could also go to our website, guysfromqueens.com, download all our podcasts over there. We have everything on audio and video form on gfknetwork.com. You could also watch live. Of course, we broadcast live every Tuesday afternoon at 4 p.m. East. Until next time, see you later, and take care, brush your hair. Good night, everybody.